Hello everyone. Welcome to Anime Octopus. Today's fanfic topic is: what if Sasuke made Naruko pregnant? Part 2. Disclaimer: the content on this channel is for entertainment and discussion purposes only. I do not own any of the anime footage used in my videos. All rights and credits go to their respective creators and copyright holders. Let's dive in. Naruko. A blonde girl called out as she dashed through the forest near the Uchiha complex. This was where she had first encountered Sasuke and recognized one of her Anbu guards as Uchiha Itachi. A 6-year-old boy frowned as he chased after his friend, a light in his eyes that would fade in the years to come. "Naruko, wait up!" Sasuke shouted as he followed her out of the trees, past the Uchiha compound, and towards the lake and pier. "It's not my fault if you're slow, Sasuke-kun," she retorted, racing towards the end of the pier. Sasuke rolled his eyes and pursued her, a small smile playing on his lips. Even though they had been friends for nearly a year, she remained a mystery to him. When they first met, he wasn't sure she was a girl due to her short, spiky hair. Recently, however, she had been growing it out. It now fell to her mid-back and was straighter, with her bangs no longer the spiky mess they once were. She had started pulling the chin-length bangs away from her face with a single blue clip on the left side. Although he hadn't admitted it to her or anyone else, she was his best friend. Sasuke was jolted from his thoughts by a short scream followed by a splash. Looking towards Naruko, he saw her disappear under the water and realized she must have slipped on the pier. The wood was wet and slippery from the last rainstorm, and he nearly slipped a few times himself while running to help her. "Naruko!" he yelled. Sasu, her head went under again as she flailed. "Help!" To his shock, he realized she wasn't swimming. As her head went under again and she didn't resurface, bubbles appeared on the water's surface, which he stared at in horror. "She can't swim," he thought. Without hesitation, he jumped into the water and began searching for his blonde friend. "Where is she?" he thought frantically. He turned and caught a flash of bright blonde hair floating around and swam towards it. Soon, his arm hooked around her slim waist, and he pulled her to the surface. As they broke the surface, he took a deep breath and pulled her towards the pier. He saw Itachi running towards them, dressed in his Anbu gear. Sasuke sighed in relief, knowing his brother would help him and Naruko, but the fact that Naruko still hadn't moved when he reached her, now in his brother's grip, worried him. In a sparsely decorated, dark room, black eyes snapped open. Unlike the boy in the memory, these eyes were colder, guarded, and devoid of any true emotion, yet filled with grief, pain, and regret. Slowly sitting up, the raven-haired boy placed his hand on his forehead and closed his eyes, trying to shake the memory. The dream hadn't been a dream at all, but a recollection from his childhood. Before the massacre, before he had severed most ties with his best friend to protect her. Back then, he hadn't been sure what he was protecting her from. He had later told himself it was from Itachi, and in some aspect, it was true. He had always feared that Itachi would come back and take away his only friend, take Naruko away like he did their parents and other clan members. Years later, that nightmare had almost become a reality when he heard that Itachi had come looking for Naruko after the Chunin exams. Now he knew that it wasn't just Itachi he was trying to protect Naruko from, but himself. To gain these eyes, you must kill your best friend. Sasuke released a painful breath, his head lowered, and his eyes brimming with painful emotion. Hadn't he listened to the words of a madman? He had listened to his brother and later to Orochimaru's promises. He had tried to gain the power of the Mangekyo, attempted to encase his heart in ice as he drove his hand through his best friend's heart, Naruko's heart. Or at least, it would have been her heart had she not deflected his hand a few inches higher. The damage was done, though. She may not have realized it, but the entire time his hand was inside her chest, his own heart felt as if it had exploded. He might deny it, call it a whim as to why he let her live after their clash of his cursed seal-enhanced Chidori and her Kyuubi-enhanced Rasengan. But in reality, as he'd stood above her, and the rain had begun to pour down, his knees collapsing under him as he was forced to his knees with his head hanging over hers, he knew he had to leave. He had to leave, because he didn't want to hurt her anymore. He finally knew in that moment she was more than his best friend. He loved her and always would, but he couldn't allow himself to be near her. When he didn't obsess as much about avenging his clan, which was dangerous. He couldn't let it go. He had to kill Itachi and avenge his clan. He could never rest until he did, not with the nightmare of history repeating itself. He feared his brother returning years later, after he'd settled down and started a family, hopefully with Naruto, only to take it all away from him. But he hadn't counted on his heart continuing to hurt even though he knew she was still alive. If she hadn't been, he would have known. He'd always been able to tell when something was wrong with her. Even the act she played as a defense mechanism at times couldn't fool him. It never truly had. Finding her after she'd left Konoha with the Toad Sannin, Jiraiya, hadn't been easy at first. But he had managed every time she came close enough to Rice and Otogakure. As he'd told her on the first night 7 months ago, he wasn't caged. He could come and go with relative freedom, but if he was gone for longer than a week, he didn't know exactly how Orochimaru would react, and he didn't feel like finding out. Right now, he couldn't match the Sannin, but his training had come far. Soon he'd have enough power to kill Itachi and Orochimaru. If the old snake Sannin thought he was going to take his body for his own, he was mistaken. He'd never had any intention of allowing that. This was simply a means to an end. It had been some time since he'd last seen Naruto. Usually, he met her once every month, and those nights kept him going insane. Sometimes they didn't even do anything intimate, as those nights weren't meant solely for intimacy. There were many times they did, but also many times they simply sat together and held small conversations. Those nights were escapes and times to remind themselves that the other was still alive. The last time they'd met had been outside of Rice Country, and she'd told him they were heading towards the Land of Water next, which was a distance from Oto. He could have made it there, but recently Orochimaru had begun training him more, and he had less time to leave for a few days. In these last few months, the dreams of his past with Naruto and dreams of her in general were more frequent. But the dream he'd just woken from was the first that involved Itachi in any way. He recalled clearly what had happened after Itachi had pulled her and him out of the water. Itachi had given Naruto CPR, and Sasuke had watched closely, listening to Itachi as he explained the importance of the technique in case he ever needed it in the future. If it would help Naruto, he'd been willing to learn anything back then. Once Naruto had expelled the water from her lungs, Sasuke had smiled widely, then frowned, and bluntly asked her how she hadn't known how to swim at nearly 6 years old. Sometimes he'd forgotten she was an orphan. The following week, he'd taught her himself how to swim. "Sasuke-kun, I apologize for frightening you. I didn't intend to fall off the pier." "I wasn't frightened, I was angry." With a soft laugh, she responded, "Very well, if you say so." Sasuke sighed and leaned back against the wall behind his bed. "I desperately want to protect her, yet I keep causing her pain," he thought, feeling a pang in his heart. "I may never be worthy of her forgiveness, Naru, but I promise I will do everything in my power to earn it." She was his guiding light. Without her, he questioned what he was truly living for, aside from his quest for vengeance and the need to protect. It was a complex moral conflict, and he recognized the irony in reconciling these motives. After all, what is the moon without the sun? November. Naruto was uncertain why the decision was made to leave Uzumaki now, but they had. At present, she was in her 7th month of pregnancy, and they had been residing in Whirlpool for approximately 3 months. During this period, they had worked to restore Uzushio as much as possible. Jiraiya had undertaken most of the physical labor, while Naruto found herself reluctant to use shadow clones. Though she was accustomed to gathering memories through them, the notion of having clones that mirrored her condition, including her pregnancy, unsettled her. She had learned this the hard way. Each time a clone dispersed, it sent an uncomfortable shiver through her, akin to a cold draft or the old superstition of someone walking over your grave. Though it didn't harm the baby or cause pain, it was far from pleasant. Jiraiya assured her that the process would not harm her or the babies, but advised her to avoid it if it caused discomfort. Naruto was simply relieved that there was no sign of Akatsuki, as she was keen to avoid endangering herself and her children. Her current stage of pregnancy had significantly limited her access to chakra, leaving her feeling incredibly vulnerable. Arriving in Wave Country was straightforward. They still had the boat they had rented, and locating Tazuna was equally simple. Naruto's past heroism on the bridge against two ninjas and Gato had made her recognizable to many. When they inquired about Tazuna's whereabouts, a woman immediately noticed Naruto's condition. "Oh, you're pregnant," she exclaimed. It seemed that Tazuna had moved his family to a more pleasant location, leaving their previous home behind for Inari, who would inherit it once he was older and potentially married. Reflecting on this, Naruto mused that Inari must be around 12 by now. Yes," she said, snapping out of her reverie. "I'm 7 months along." The woman smiled warmly, seemingly unfazed by Naruto's youth. Although Naruto was indeed young, the practice of marrying young was not uncommon in the elemental nations. Some girls were married around her age, and Naruto, being 15, fit into this context. Among shinobi, starting families at a younger age was more common due to their shorter lifespans. Despite her age, the Hittite on her forehead indicated her adulthood and years of experience. Naruto's pregnancy was evident, her stomach noticeably large, a fact Jiraiya had learned she was sensitive about. She appeared as though she had swallowed a couple of beach balls. She wore a royal blue kimono adorned with small white, red, orange, and silver dragonflies, and the Uzumaki spiral on the back. Her hair was secured with an orange ribbon, holding it in a low ponytail, with a clip managing the left side of her bangs. "Do you know the baby's gender yet?" the woman asked, a question Naruto found somewhat typical when meeting a pregnant stranger, even though this woman likely knew her from the bridge. "Not yet," Naruto replied, and the woman nodded understandingly. "Well, Tazuna and his family have moved into a house in that direction," the woman said, gesturing. "It's the only house for about a quarter mile, so you should find it easily." "Thank you," Jiraiya said as they set off toward their destination. As they approached the house, Jiraiya broached a topic he had been considering. "You know, this won't be easy even after the babies are born," he said. Naruto sighed. "I understand. I have to protect them and myself." Jiraiya nodded. "This may be one of the most challenging times, but at least you are safe now and happy." Naruto smiled in agreement. "Yes. My primary concern is their health. I'll address everything else after they are born." After a pause, Jiraiya smirked. "For your sake, I hope they take after you. We don't need 2 more Uchiha with sticks up their backs." Naruto sighed, her eye twitching. While she would have liked to reprimand Jiraiya, she had to admit some truth in his remark. It seemed to be a common trait among the prominent clans of Konoha, the Uchiha and Hyuga, with the Hyuga appearing to have a particularly pronounced version. Returning to the present, Naruto noticed they were nearing a house, spacious yet modest, suitable for a small family with extra room. Smiling, she turned to Jiraiya. "We're here." "Nei-chan." Naruto glanced up from her book on Fuinjutsu, her back resting against a large tree on the newly acquired property of Tazuna and his family. She wore a dark blue dress adorned with small orange blossoms, a gift from Tsunami. Accompanied by Jiraiya, she had been staying with the family for the past 2 weeks. Although they had initially planned to stay at a village hotel, Tsunami's insistence led them to stay with her family. Reluctantly, both she and Jiraiya agreed to remain until it was time to move on. The past few weeks had been notably peaceful, a rarity she couldn't recall experiencing in recent years. Inari had grown noticeably since her last visit. He was taller and rarely wore his hat. She had thought him to be around 12, but he would actually be turning 10 on December 25th. "Inari," she responded with a warm smile, closing her book and resting it on her lap. "What's going on?" Inari returned the smile and said, "Mom wanted to know if you're up for shopping today." "It's for the babies." Naruto leaned further against the tree, stretching her legs out and resting a hand on her pronounced belly. "I thought we had everything we needed," she said, to which Inari shrugged. "Apparently not," he replied. Since their arrival, news of the hero of Waves' return had spread rapidly through the village. The announcement of her expecting twins had garnered equal attention, resulting in a steady influx of baby clothes, toys, and food baskets. Given this, Inari was puzzled about what else remained to be purchased. The baby wasn't due until January or late December, as the local doctor had mentioned twins often arrived a few weeks early. All right, Atoto, let's go find Tsunami, Naruto said, carefully rising from the ground. The extra weight made the task challenging, and Inari had to assist her to prevent a fall. Be careful, Naru-nichan, Inari said with a light laugh. Naruto rolled her eyes at his playful tone, and together they walked towards the house, which was only a short distance from the tree where she had been reading. The tree was situated in the backyard, close to the water where she had observed Inari and Tazuna fishing. As they approached the front of the house, Naruto came to an abrupt stop. Her eyes widened in surprise as she saw a tall man with silver hair conversing with Jiraiya, Tazuna, and Tsunami. Hey, isn't that your sensei? Inari asked, his eyes also widening in recognition. Naruto realized immediately, from Jiraiya's pained expression and Inari's lack of discretion, that Kakashi had overheard his outburst. As if in slow motion, Kakashi turned to face them, and the surprise in his single visible eye was almost exaggeratedly wide. Naruto half expected it to pop out. Naruto! Kakashi exclaimed, blinking rapidly. You! What? How? Turning to Jiraiya, Kakashi narrowed his eye. Jiraiya, please tell me that this is just an incredibly realistic disguise. Jiraiya's eyes widened, and he struggled to find a suitable response. On one hand, Kakashi's reaction was likely less severe than the village's reaction or Sasuke's potential response, however, he was unsure when that revelation would occur. When he had asked Naruto about it, she fell silent and appeared on the verge of tears. Eventually, Jiraiya understood that Naruto preferred to wait until the twins were older and more capable of defending themselves. He inferred that she meant around 4 or 5 years old, the typical age for training in prominent clans like the Uchiha or Hyuga. The decision to withhold information from Sasuke pained Naruto greatly, but she felt it was necessary. She was acutely aware of the threats from Uchiha adversaries, the Akatsuki, and even Orochimaru, who seemed fixated on the Sharingan. In a worst-case scenario, if Orochimaru obtained Sasuke's body, he would eventually require a new host with the Sharingan. Jiraiya understood Naruto's concerns. His former teammate was ruthless enough to consider exploiting the twins for his own ends. Given Orochimaru's history of experiments on infants, Jiraiya knew that any such experimentation would likely be fatal for the children. He was surprised to learn that Naruto believed Orochimaru would not succeed in acquiring Sasuke's body, as she seemed confident that Sasuke would never permit it. I could, but that would be a lie, Jiraiya said. Kakashi's gaze hardened, and Jiraiya sighed. Don't look at me like that. I had no idea she was seeing anyone until she told me she was pregnant. Kakashi's glare softened slightly as he considered how Minato-sensei would have reacted to this development. His main concern was the identity of the father, so he refocused his attention on his student. Naruto, who? Kakashi trailed off, and Naruto offered a faint smile. He noted her changes since their last meeting. She had grown, not only due to her pregnancy but also in her overall maturity. She was taller, her baby fat had diminished, and her hair, though braided, now cascaded to just below her knees. She wore a dark blue dress with 3/4 lace sleeves and adorned with small orange blossoms. The colors orange and blue, regardless of the shade, had always been associated with her sunset blonde hair. Naruto offered a sheepish smile as she responded, "It's a bit of a funny story. To put it succinctly, I've been seeing Sasuke." Kakashi blinked, struggling to process her words. Sasuke? You were involved with Sasuke? That doesn't quite add up, Naru. You're barely 8 or 9 months along. Almost, but I'm just beginning my 8th month, Naruto clarified. And we aren't. You know what, I'm not entirely sure what we are. This situation is all new to me. In other words, She's been involved with the enemy, Jiraiya interjected, clarifying for Kakashi. This remark elicited a sharp glare from Naruto, which could have rivaled her mother's and made Jiraiya wonder if she had learned from that Hyuga girl she was friends with. I see, Kakashi said, attempting to process the information. He had noticed the undeniable chemistry between Naruto and Sasuke, evident even before they became Team 7. He also knew from the Sandaime that their friendship had predated the Uchiha massacre, an event that had driven Sasuke to sever their ties. Kakashi was aware that Naruto had been present on the day of the massacre and had experienced similar trauma from the Mangekyo Sharingan. The emotional complexities within this generation's Team 7 had surpassed even those of his own team. Typically, such situations involved a girl who admired a mysterious boy, the boy who remained indifferent, and a hyperactive boy who had feelings for the girl who did not reciprocate. In this case, however, the dynamics were more intricate. A girl who liked a stoic, mysterious boy, who was in denial about his feelings for a hyperactive, mysterious girl, who was unaware of her own feelings for the stoic boy, while another boy tried to befriend the girl who admired the stoic boy. If that made any sense, it was certainly a unique and complex triangle. Ultimately, Kakashi had known that Sakura stood little chance of winning Sasuke's affections, as Sasuke had already been emotionally invested, even if he didn't admit it. Kakashi had realized this after the battle in Wave with Zabuza and Haku. However, he had not anticipated that his two students would have clandestine meetings. He also had not expected to arrive in Wave with Sakura, Ino, and Choji, who were still Jinan after the last Chunin exams, only to discover a heavily pregnant Naru. Kakashi-sensei, are you alright? Naruto's hesitant voice broke through his thoughts. You've been staring at me. With a subtle eye smile, Kakashi finally allowed a grin to emerge beneath his mask. Well, it seems Sasuke has indeed achieved his goal of restoring his clan. Naruto gazed solemnly at the two bodies lying side by side. One was a missing nin often labeled a demon, the other a boy she might have considered a friend. Haku's past mirrored her own in some ways but differed significantly in others. She couldn't fathom the pain of knowing her parents only to have her father kill her mother and attempt to kill her. Naruto, Kakashi-sensei. Sakura's voice broke the silence as she knelt over Sasuke. He's alive. Sasuke's alive. Kakashi observed as Naruto's tense posture relaxed, her previously shattered blue eyes regaining their vibrant hue. Sasuke? She whispered, turning swiftly, her blonde hair whipping around as she hurried to her teammate, falling to her knees at Sasuke's side. Kakashi followed, noting the complex relationship between his blonde and raven-haired students. The bond was even more intricate than he had previously thought. As Sasuke, still resembling a pincushion, began to sit up, Naruto pulled him into a hug. He noticed the mixture of envy, confusion, realization, and denial in Sakura's green eyes. I thought you were dead, you stubborn idiot. Naruto exclaimed. Sasuke groaned but did not push her away. Naruto, you'll hurt him. The senbon are still in place, Sakura cautioned, causing Naruto to pull back immediately. Sasuke rolled his eyes. Though the hug had been slightly uncomfortable, he realized he missed the closeness, though he would never admit it. Kakashi sighed, contemplating the situation. He had suspected this dynamic when he first met them, but now it felt more evident. Relationships among team members were not uncommon, nor were love triangles. However, none were as legendary as Team 7. He knew from experience how unfortunate the team had been historically. He hoped for his students' sake that they could overcome the so-called Team 7 curse, though a nagging feeling in his gut made him uncertain. So, it's twins? Kakashi inquired, sitting at the table for lunch with the family. It appeared Tsunami and Tazuna had informally adopted Naruto into their family. Naruto nodded, setting her chopsticks down. Yes, the doctor in town confirmed it, but Kyubi was the first to tell me. Kyubi? Kakashi asked, startled. Naruto laughed, shaking her head. I know, but don't worry. The fox isn't as malevolent as one might think, though he's far from gentle. He has his reasons for disliking humans, though I've not asked. It's not like he can do anything significant. The seal is more advanced than Konoha realizes, especially since it was developed by Uzumaki seal masters. Kakashi nodded thoughtfully. This was new information for him. He had assumed the seal had been created by Minato, but now he realized how mistaken that assumption was. The seal would have needed to be developed well before that day to be used effectively at the last moment, given the years required to construct a functional seal of Naru's caliber. Minato may have contributed to its completion, being a sealing genius comparable to an Uzumaki, but even he could not have devised something so intricate spontaneously or within less than 3 years. It had taken him nearly 4 years to refine the Hiraishin to its current state. So, why are you here, sensei? Naru inquired after a brief pause. Is it for a mission? Kakashi nodded. Yes, a C-rank mission to escort a merchant here. Since I was in the vicinity, I decided to visit Tazuna and happened to run into Jiraiya, he explained. I am here with Sakura, Ino, and Choji. Given that you and Sasuke... Kakashi hesitated, noticing the flicker of sorrow in Naru's eyes at the mention of Sasuke's name. He regretted bringing up the Uchiha Avenger. Shikamaru is a Chunin now, so until the next exam, those three will function as a team. Naru nodded and bit her lip as a thought occurred to her. Where are they now? In town with the client. Otherwise, they're at the hotel. We will be departing tomorrow morning, he responded, raising an eyebrow. Why? Do you wish to see them? Naru's eyes widened, and she shook her head. No, I don't think that would be wise, she said. I don't want anyone from home to know. I didn't even want you to find out, but it was difficult to conceal once you saw me. I still have the Akatsuki to contend with, and the last thing I need is for them to learn about my vulnerabilities. She sighed, clasping her hands around a cup of tea in front of her. My mother's seal was less advanced than mine, but it shared the same weakness. The last thing I want is for the Akatsuki to repeat history. Kakashi frowned, vividly recalling the events of 15 years ago. He understood her concerns. And Sasuke? He asked quietly. Naru sighed deeply. I desire to tell him. Kami knows I do. I can't help but think that perhaps he would return home and cease bearing the burden of avenging his family if he knew. Yet, another part of me fears that revenge is the only thing that drives him, and that he might disregard me and our children. Moreover, I cannot reveal it to him yet because of Orochimaru. It is simply too perilous. Naruko looked up at her sensei, struggling to hold back tears. You know how that man covets the Sharingan. If there is even the slightest chance that our children will inherit the bloodline, he will pursue them. Between my fear of rejection, the threat of Orochimaru, and the possibility of the Akatsuki discovering our secret, I just can't tell him yet. I only hope he won't despise me for keeping this from him. Kakashi looked at the blonde and nodded. I understand, and I won't tell anyone, Naruko. I promise. Although, I don't believe you need to worry too much about Sasuke rejecting you. He may actually become more protective of you, and Uchiha have always been a possessive clan. Naruko smiled and nodded. Thank you, Sensei. Dear YouTube family. That concludes today's video. Please subscribe to my channel for more content. Thank you. Gratefully. Anime Octopus.